Hello, good afternoon. My name is Daniel. Welcome to my channel. And today I'm coming to you feeling a little bit of shame. This week has really sucked, and this weekend hasn't proven to be much better. So on Friday, I was originally going to walk to the drugstore, and I was 3 steps out of my house when I pivoted and walked to my friend's bookstore instead and just got a pile of books. It's the time-honored tradition of retail therapy. Any red-blooded American will be very familiar with that. But yeah, so this week I have a pile of books to show you. But before we get to the greed and avarice that is my book collecting, I do want to share some of the things I've read this week. The first being an ebook of Trilby. I don't have anything to show you, so I'm just going to put it there. Trilby is a book by George de Maurier. It was written, I think, in the 1890s, though it takes place in 1850 or thereabouts. Time progresses a little bit in the book. But essentially, it's about 3 artists who live in a bohemian lifestyle in Paris in the 1850s, where they also meet 2 essential characters, one being a woman named Trilby, who is honestly probably one of the earlier examples of the manic pixie dream girl. She is quirky and very good-natured, but she will do things that are out of the ordinary and would cause some people to go as happens in this book. One of the artists is named Little Billy. That's what he goes by. He's a very talented artist, but he is the main love interest of Trilby, though it seems everyone loves Trilby. There's also a villainous character who unfortunately is a little of an anti-Semitic trope of an evil Jew. He has his own particular qualities, though. He's a very talented musician. His name is Svengali, and he's also a hypnotist. And it doesn't really ever explain where his powers of hypnotism come from, and I'm wondering if that is also supposed to be some sort of trope that I'm just not familiar with. But, yeah, so Svengali spends time with these artists, but he's always, kind of mean when he's around them. He gets jealous very easily. He takes out a bunch of loans and doesn't pay them back. And he is also in love with Trilby, the manic pixie dream girl of this book. And in this book, honestly, not a lot happens. It was kind of disappointing. I think they were trying to establish Paris and the bohemian lifestyle at the expense of the plot of this book. So there's a lot of diatribes, especially the author just making notes about his thoughts on religion and what's going on in society right now. And it did not work for me ultimately. The story itself is kind of interesting, and I know there were a lot of adaptations to this. It started with play adaptations for the stage. And I guess during one of the productions, Trilby wore a very distinctive hat, which was a kind of a fedora thing where it snapped back in the back, and it became popularized as the Trilby hat that we know today. So that was interesting. This book apparently was very influential. A lot of, like I said, stage plays and movie adaptations came out of it, and in a lot of those, they kind of removed the whole Jewishness of Svengali and just turned him into an evil hypnotist, pianist. So I guess that makes it a little more palatable, especially for audiences today. But yeah, so little Billy falls in love with Trilby, but he is distraught because Trilby does a lot of odd jobs, like picking up garbage, as well as being a nude model for the artists in the area, and that really bothers little Billy, and he just goes off in a huff, and Trilby apparently has no sense of this being a problem, and she's like, oh, why is he upset? And then it dawns on her, she's like, oh, I will never do that again. And and yeah, like things happen in this book, but like they don't really have much to do with the actual plot for a lot of it. But I guess at some point at a Christmas party, little Billy proposes to Zoe Deschanel, Trilby, 20 times, and on the 20th time she finally says yes. Immediately when his family gets wind of it, they come out and they're like, "You are not suitable, Trilby." And she's like, "You're right, I am not suitable. I will just leave and never see him again." And so she does. And so like there's a time skip where like little Billy just has no sense of love, like he's just died on the inside. And he's always very, very melodramatic, very kind of wimpy of a character. Didn't really care for him much at all. He's opposed by another one of the artists named Taffy, who's like a bodybuilder with like great big mutton chop type beard, who's also in love with Trilby, but like she obviously didn't requite his feelings, so he just had to let her go. So everyone lets Trilby go, except Svengali gets his talons on her, and I guess one of the quirks of Zoe Trilby is that she is like has a very strong, powerful voice, but she is completely tone deaf, and sometimes Svengali feels like kind of mean spirited, so she doesn't realize she's tone deaf, and so he will like get her to sing, and like it's just like ear achingly bad, and she just doesn't realize what's going on. Like she's like, "Oh, that went pretty well," but like everyone is just like, "Oh, she can't sing at all," even though she has this wonderfully powerful voice. Well, Svengali uses the powers of hypnotism to make it so she can learn to go up and down the register and recognize those voices, but only when she's in a hypnotic state. And so the three artists come back to Paris years later, and Mrs. Svengali is a musical sensation, and they find out it is Trilby. And I'm not going to spoil it, I guess. I mean, this is only 100 and something years old. All right, sorry, I got interrupted. What was I saying? So they come back and find that Trilby is now like an amazing singer, but she kind of snubs them, and it turns out she's like in this hypnotic state. And I'm not going to spoil the book much further than that. Only characters die in this book, and it's never really 100% clear why, other than like some side effect of heartbreak or just generalized mean abuse, but like not anything specific, just like, yeah, you were slightly mistreated and so you died. And well, little Billy, okay, sorry. There was a spoiler after all. Little Billy just sort of dies of heartache just within the span of 2 pages, whereas another person's death, I wonder who it could be, was much more lingering. But yeah, the hypnotism was just like a trope. Even, man, I'm just about to drop a bunch of spoilers, but like lots of people just die, and it's never really clear why. It's not the point of the book. The point of the book is to be like, isn't the bohemian lifestyle swell or interesting? In my experience, the people who actually live that way have never had a great ending, which I guess is true of the characters in Trilby, so that tracks, I guess. But I guess maybe the fans of this book at the time just took the wrong lessons from it or something. I don't know what the point of this book was. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't very good either. So things I did learn though, there's a phrase I used to hear, and it's like, life's not all beer and Skittles. And being 21st century me, I'm like, well, Skittles, the candy. No, apparently that's bowling, because I'm pretty sure Skittles didn't exist as a candy in the 1850s. So I learned something. And that's always important. If you're going to read something, that isn't really landing for you, at least you can learn something from it. Also, there was a lot of the phrase "live long and prosper," and I'm just like, yeah, that must have been a phrase before Star Trek. Didn't know that. So, anyways, Trilby, I don't really recommend it, but if you're going to read it, get an edition where they translate the French. That is not the free Kindle edition, but unless you know French, in which case, go for it. But yeah, so that was a little bit disappointing. A book I like a little bit more is Reassuring Tales by T.E.D. Klein. This is the author of Ceremonies and as well as Dark Gods. Dark Gods is a book I read, I think, last year. Really loved it. This is a little hit and miss. It wasn't really intended to be a collection. I feel like based on like the introduction to the first edition, which is included here, and his further like talks about like, well, these are hit and miss, that he didn't really want to publish these in this format. So I don't know what guilted him into doing it. I'm glad he did though, because I did legitimately enjoy a lot of the stories here. It's just some of them were underbaked, I think. And actually, that's a phrase he uses, because I was thinking it, and then he mentioned it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not crazy in thinking that. But the big highlight is the first story in this book, which is the events at Poor Oath Farm, which is the first story he ever published. It's really good. I like it. There's a lot of literary references, and I didn't know them all. I knew some of them, and like a lot of it was like horror references in that short story, and as well as like Walden, and it's about a character who is like living on a farm with these like Mennonite type people, and so like Walden would make sense. The horror stories that he mentions make sense, but yeah, it's a little Lovecraftian, but like in T.E.D. Klein's own style, and I just like his personality as it shines through some of like the essays and the interviews in this, so it's worth reading, but you're not going to get Dark Gods from this. I plan on reading Ceremonies soon, because Ceremonies is sort of based on the events of Poor Oath Farm, and that was very compelling, so I want to continue with that. Excuse me. And finally, I started this. It's going to take a while to finish it. This was inspired by a BookTube event, Spring Into Adventure. I'm not following the event as prescribed. I'm just doing my own version of just wanting to read some adventure stories. And so I pulled the big book of adventure stories. This is edited by Otto Penzler. So far, this has been really good. This has been my favorite big book so far. But it also helps that the very first section which I read is all of the sword and sorcery stories, which include The Golden Snare by Farmer Bishop and Arthur Gilchrist Brodeur, The Devil in Iron by Robert E. Howard. It's a good Conan story. The Mighty Manslayer by Harold Lamb. That was a really good story about the descendants of Genghis Khan. And The Seven Black Priests by Fritz Leiber, which is a Fafnir and Grey Mouser story. I love Fritz Leiber, so this has been an excellent collection so far. We're going to get into many other genres in this, because adventure stories is not a genre, as Otto and one of the other people in the introduction point out several times. So it's a nice... I think I like it better than a lot of the other big books so far, because you're getting much more of a variety. Like, what is an adventure story? That could mean so much. So I still have a long way to go, but I'm not tiring of this at all, and I don't think I will. So if I don't get through it this month, not a big deal. There's a lot I wanted to read, and because I got sick early on in the month, sort of the end of last month into this month, I'm just behind. And when you're behind, we're going to get into the stuff I purchased. You should not be buying more books if you're behind on the stuff that you already have and you're not reading it fast enough. But I'm dumb, and I have a problem with my compulsions. So here are a couple things that I got kind of in the mail. We'll start with this. This is not from the bookstore. But I ordered this a while ago because growing up I was a huge fan of Choose Your Own Adventure books. They're some of the first books that I've read, other than like the Hardy Boys. And I think they're very thematic to the spring into adventure as well. Not only because they're called Choose Your Own Adventure, but just because you go into them a little bit different. It's probably why I'm big into tabletop role-playing games today. So there was one that has like always been, this has always haunted me, and that is one I finally sought out, and that is Space Vampire, which is Choose Your Own Adventure 71. This is about a vampire in space, and the illustrations are actually, I mean, for their time, they're pretty good. But growing up, I was a bit of a cowardly boy. I think that's why I like horror so much today. It's because I was just scared all the time. And one thing that particularly frightened me was vampires. I don't know why, but it was just like one of the great fears of mine was vampires. And so like reading this when I was like 8 years old, and just seeing that image, I'm just like, ah! But it's also a space adventure, which is awesome. And one of the endings, spoiler for Choose Your Own Adventure book, is there's like a whole planet of vampires, and they have like an ocean of blood, which makes no sense, but is badass. So, Space Vampire, I'm happy to have it, and I will be going through it just at my leisure. I don't really count it as a book I've read because you don't go through the whole thing unless I go through every single path, which kind of takes the fun out of it. Here's the 1973 annual World's Best SF, edited by Donald Wollheim. I'm collecting these. I have almost all of them, but I just wanted to read them chronologically through, I think it starts with 1972, and so this is one that I would want to have next, so I just went ahead and got it. But I heard that wasn't the best series of anthologies of science fiction stories, and so this is one I did seek out, and that is The Very Best of the Best, edited by Gardner Dozois? I don't know how you say it. But this I heard about from Steve Downhue on his channel, and apparently it's really, really good anthology. And it's not limited to like 1 year, so it's just like one editor going through like his Rolodex of stories and picking out his actual favorites. There's no like politicking involved. So those are things that came in the mail. Here are some things, because I still visit the little free libraries, and I donate to them frequently. Recently I've been mailing out books, which has felt kind of nice, though the post office really gets weird when you want to mail something media mail. I'm like, I have extra books I just want to give to friends. And they're like, we can open this. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Just, close it when you're done. But I've also discovered media mail is, like, notorious for, like, getting delayed. So, sorry, guys. You'll get your stuff eventually. I don't remember where I was going with that. But these are things I got from the Little Free Library. The Little Free Library decided that I need to continue reading a book series I started last year, and that is Flowers in the Attic. So here are 3 more in that family saga. I'm missing one in the middle, but this is The Garden of Shadows, and these are lovely covers. I think that was in reverse order. I'm sorry. Petals on the Wind, or On the Wind. If There Be Thorns. I think there's a book in between these, and then Garden of Shadows. So I'll continue them because they were free. Something else I got. I already read it before, but I didn't have a copy. That is the Epic of Gilgamesh. This is the Penguin version, which is not the version I read, so I don't know if there's any differences. I think there are vast differences between editions of the Epic of Gilgamesh, so we'll see. Something for June on the Range that isn't fiction is The Authentic Life of Billy the Kid, and it's a faithful and interesting narrative by Pat F. Garrett, Sheriff of Lincoln County, New Mexico. by whom he was finally hunted down and captured by killing him. So, allegedly, nonfiction. Could be good. Not a huge fan of this author, but I need to read more of his stuff because it's part of the canon. It's James Joyce Dubliners. Read Ulysses before. Still, I need to reread it. Once I reread Artist as a Young Man, but like I don't like him. I don't know what people see in him, but that's just me. Now that I'm done making enemies, last thing I got from the Little Free Library is a book I really love, but I didn't have a copy. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, about his time in the Nazi concentration camps and him coming up with his own sort of philosophy based on suffering. It's really interesting. It's a really quick read and really easy. Finally, okay, these are the books that I got from my friend's bookstore. This is one I already own, but it was sold as a set, and I did not have the second book. And these covers are actually really nice. This is the Once and Future King. Unfortunately, when I took the sticker off, it took part of the cover off. But it's also the Book of Merlin, which I didn't have. So these are two essential fantasy books that I haven't gotten to yet. I know there's a lot of old fantasy I still haven't gotten to, working my way through it, but these are really, really pretty editions. So I wanted the Book of Merlin, and they were rubber banded together and sold at one price, so I just got another copy of the Once and Future King, and I'll keep whichever one's my favorite. To Kill a Mockingbird. Finally, I don't like buying books new, but it's almost virtually impossible to get this text that isn't like just filled with highlighting from some ninth grader. This looks like it was never read at all, and all the pages are clean. So I finally have a nice copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, which I haven't read in ages. So want to give that a reread. I think it's my brother-in-law's favorite book. All right, these books I got in a set. Not sure of the order. I think it's this way. But I don't have the first book in the series, but these paperbacks are really, really pretty. And so I wanted to get them. And again, one of the fantasy essentials that I've never read, which is The Worm Ouroboros. I have the Menzentian Gate, and then A Fish Dinner in Mamensen, and Mistress of Mistresses. From what I hear, this is a very weird series, so I don't know anything about them, to be honest. But this was on, I think, Steve Donahew's essential fantasy list, as well as the first book is something that Michael K. Vaughan is going to read for his classic fantasy project, because he needs more projects. I also got a copy of The Visitors by Clifford D. Simak. Is this? Okay. So what looked like a big black box, perhaps 50 feet high, 200 long, had settled squarely on Jerry Conklin's car. The townspeople of Lone Pine, Minnesota, were the first to see it, and then one of them was first and only human to shoot at it. He paid for his rashness in instant death. Within hours, the public knew something strange had happened, and was beginning to face the incredible possibility that the Earth harbored something from outer space. A machine? An intelligent being? There was no way to know. But Jerry Conklin knew. The visitor had scooped him up, held him prisoner for several hours, let him go. Jerry knew the visitor was a living, intelligent creature. That just sounds great. And I'm going to read City, I think also by Clifford D. Simak, very soon. So if I like it, I have more. Because that's what I need, more. Give me more. I'm feeling really guilty about this trip. But we'll continue because there's more. This is Space Plague by George O. Smith. Is this the one? No. This is, I don't know anything about it, but I just like the look of it. And the back cover doesn't really tell you much. A fantastic story of disappearance and chase in one man's weird and terrifying race against time and unseen enemies to locate and stop the dread menace that struck slowly and painfully in its inexorable attack on mankind. Probably a plague. Or is that a metaphor? I don't know. Finally, this is a cool addition. The story is actually called Space Platform, but this is it! Ripped from tomorrow's headlines, Space Platform by Maurier. Amazingly prophetic science fiction adventure. Did this come to pass? When was this written? 1953 is the first copyright. This is a 1965 edition. All right. Bear with the... Remember that date I gave you when I read the synopsis, okay? Reach for the stars. Woody. We now accept space travel as reality, but what of a city in space built... But what of a city in space built on an ever-suspended platform? Joan Kennemore thought his job was going to be a small one in this project, just installing gyroscopes. He hadn't counted on beautiful women, a superhumanly powerful Indian, and a midget whose mind functioned like an electronic brain. Maurier is one of the world's top science fiction writers. This incredible prophetic book will show you why. See, 1965. But just because it's 1965 doesn't mean that I can't read it. I've read worse. But here's something I got solely for the cover. And it is The Wanderings of Vvor. And this looks like some sort of, based on the synopsis on the inside, some comedy fantasy, which could land like a complete flop, or it could be actually pretty good. But there is a character who is known as Mother Duck, a powerful enchantress with a fearsome reputation. She bakes wizards into bread. And this is about wizards who, I guess, are allergic to magic, and it's become like something that has caught on, and now someone's trying to quest as the eternal apprentice to fix it. It could be good, but yeah. I have another anthology because I can't get enough of science fiction anthologies. This is the best of Astounding. Not much to say about that. These are stories from the 1940s, though. So a prime candidate for... what was the event called? Rocket Summer. Rocket Summer. Don't miss it. I think that's in July. Here's a print-on-demand book, which, first of all, they just feel awful. But this is the 1818 text of Frankenstein, which I didn't have. I only had the later adaptation. So, happy to have it, though, it feels like it was like, I don't know, bound in slug skin. Do you know, you've ordered print-on-demand books. You know what I'm talking about, that feel that just feels wrong. That's I lovingly caress Frankenstein's monster's face. But yeah, it just feels gross, but kind of appropriate for Frankenstein, I guess. Last month I read Evelyn Waugh's Brideshead Revisited. Liked it a lot, so I got a copy of Decline and Fall. Finally, this is the last thing. It's the last four things, but it's something I've been looking for a while. And I was really happy that she had a full set that she sold as one. For a while, I've been having a hard time finding Carl Sandburg's biography on Lincoln, the complete thing, the 4-volume set. The best I could get previously was this thing right here, which is the condensed version. It has the prairie years and the war years, but like, it's not. It's condensed. This is the full thing, and I've been wanting a copy of that for a while. Have never run across it in the wild until last Friday, or this past Friday. So here they are, and that ends the video. Thank you for sticking around this long. I'm coming Tuesday with a tag. I'm going to do those tag videos. I get tagged and I just never do them. Apologies. But I plan on getting better with tags because it's a good way of like interacting with other booktubers and the community as a whole. Something that the whole reason I do this is to just chat with you guys. So thank you for sticking around this long, and I will talk to you later. Thank you.